everyone. Sam Shaw here, founder of Wall Street Mastermind. I'm excited to be back today with another client interview for you guys. Today, I'm excited to have Michael on with us. Michael is one of our students that just finished going through the summer 2024 recruiting process as a sophomore. And, he's been working with us for, I guess you joined like at the very end of 2022, right? So it's been
Yep.
about 4+ months because we're recording this in mid-April of 2023. And so he's just finished his recruiting process. He was able to secure a very good offer, which I'll let him tell you about himself. But also coming from just a complete non-target school. And so I'm sure this conversation will be of interest for a lot of you, especially those of you who also come from a similar background. And so we just want to come on here, talk about his journey, share some insights with you that hopefully you guys can use to help yourself succeed in this process as well. So Michael, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today. And if you don't mind, just starting off by introducing yourself a little bit and giving our audience a bit of just a sense of your profile and kind of who you are as a person.
Yeah, sure. So thanks for having me again, Sam. I guess start off, I'm originally from the East Coast, moved out to the West Coast for college, at a non-target school, like you kind of said. A little background on my school, I guess you kind of mentioned complete non-target, which is pretty accurate, I'd say. I when I first started getting interested in banking before I even joined the program, kind of looked at alumni database and LinkedIn. I think we had like 2 total people in investment banking, one of which did like a master's in finance somewhere else. So they weren't even like completely from my school. So that was definitely interesting to see.
Yeah.
So as far as that goes, it was like a lot of cold outreach in that sense. Kind of got interest in banking from doing some investment club in high school, and just overall was really interested in finance. Decided to major in it at now a school that I probably wouldn't have chose just because of the difficulties. But again, I think it's definitely prepared me and helped me accelerate in ways I didn't imagine. And honestly, really grateful for the offer that I got. I'll be working at a middle market firm in Chicago next summer, so super excited about that.
Yep, that's awesome. So I guess so you already knew you wanted to do banking back in high school then? Is that what you're saying?
I guess it's actually more in college. Like I knew I wanted to do finance in high school for sure, just because I was on an investment club, which really kind of interests me in the markets and that such, and I wanted to
Yeah.
learn more about it. Then I kind of looked at careers and like freshman year of college, really got interested in banking, and then started taking steps, I guess, end of my freshman year and heading into freshman summer. So yeah.
Got it. Okay. So I guess so you got this middle market banking in Chicago. Was this your first offer or did you decide to take it first offer you got, or like kind of walk us through like the process and the like how you made this decision, I guess. But
Yeah,
like was
sure.
this one of your top choice groups, so you were happy with it, so you just took it, or like different people do different things, right? So like how did you think through that?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Yeah, I was in a few processes. Some were for lower middle market banks, some were for other middle markets and stuff like that. And then obviously the group that I was interviewing with, that was probably my top choice overall. It was an industry group that I really enjoyed and really thought could propel me into the industry that I want to do later in my career as well, which was healthcare. So that was a big reason why I decided to accept the offer. And
Mhm.
additionally, there's a group that I had the chance to network with. Um, they were probably some of the best conversations I had, and I really enjoyed the people that I talked to and thought I could work in that culture really well. So that's another big reason. So I canceled my other super days that I had coming up that next week. But yeah,
Oh, okay. What other super days, or how many other super days did you end up canceling?
I had one other super day and then like one other interview come out, and then I had another hire view for another middle market firm that I can't
Mm.
just didn't do just because I was like, this is kind of my dream group in that sense. So I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna take this. It's at a great
Got it.
firm and kind of really excited about it.
That's nice. That's awesome. So I guess let's kind of like backtrack a little bit because like I said, you joined, at the very end of 2022. And so
Hmm.
like right around that time, that's basically like halfway through sophomore year for you, right?
Yep.
And at that point, that was like I think a couple applications for summer 2024 had opened up already. And then most of them were like right about to open, if I recall correctly.
Yep.
And so you discovered, I think earlier you say you discovered that you want to do banking probably like that first semester of college,
Yeah.
right? So prior to joining Wall Street Mastermind, like what were some of the things that you were already doing on your own to kind of like prepare yourself for IB recruiting? Or was it like you just got interested and then like Wall Street Mastermind was kind of like the first thing that you did?
Yeah. I was doing some outreach, not as much as I did once I joined the program for sure. Because recruiting season one was in effect, but I reached out to a few people at like smaller firms, where I'm located right now, and that had some success, but I was mostly using LinkedIn, so it kind of varied, I'd say.
Mm,
But used a lot more emails later in, a little bit before I joined the program, and also um, after I joined the program, I just started slamming out cold emails and that, and that's probably when I saw the most success. But
mm,
yeah, it's just like the numbers game. I was trying to do that. Obviously, I think learning a little bit of technical as well. I started preparing, read a few books and stuff like that. I think investment banking, Wiley Finance, that textbook, I read that
mhm.
just to prepare for some of the valuation questions. And that helped me prepare a little bit, but definitely learned a lot through your technical modules and stuff like that as well.
Got it. Okay. So, what made you want to join something like Wall Street Mastermind then? Because
Hmm.
I think like, first of all, like, I don't know how you found us, but like, I would say we're still relatively small, right? Like, I mean, we've been around for over 5 years. We've worked with, I think, less than 900 students during that time. So, like, compared to the overall investment banking applicant pool per se, like I would say it's a very small percentage of the overall candidate pool. So like not bottom line is like not everyone thinks to, join a program like this. So like
Hmm.
what made you want to do something like this as opposed to just continuing to do what you were already doing, like continuing to just, network on your own, continuing to maybe study through finance textbooks that you have or interview guides or
Yeah.
the more typical resources that are out there.
Yeah, sure. I think it came down a lot to my background and where I was currently. I guess my school um, was still growing, and they didn't have a lot of alumni in banking or even any other high finance field. So in that sense, it was really hard to find like a mentor and someone to kind of guide me through the process. And none of my family members ever went through it, so I was pretty much on my own, and maybe like a few of my other classmates were trying to do it, but they were kind of shooting in the dark as well in that sense.
Mm,
So um, I kind of wanted the mentorship out of the program, and I felt like you guys had a great team of coaches that had a lot of great experience in finance and
yeah.
could really help me guide me through the process of recruiting. And I think that's held true. Um, I guess that's probably the main reason, and also I think the community was another one. Obviously, there's a lot of people in Wall Street Mastermind that post questions every day to like the different channels and stuff like that. I think that also played a pretty big role in helping me learn a lot of different behaviorals and technicals in that
Mm,
sense, and just kind of like furthered my learning from the modules, and interacting with them helped a lot.
yeah. I mean, so you mentioned earlier, obviously, that like you found like two alumni from your school that
Yeah.
that are working in banking. Is it just like a really small school in terms of student population, or like how many students would you say you guys have each year per
No,
class?
I
Just
mean, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so our school recently grew a lot. I think 2010 we had like a class size of like 2,000 kids per class, so it was growing slowly. But before that, it was like less than like 200 kids a class. So they
Oh
really
wow.
started to expand a lot, and they're growing a lot in that sense. And then now I came in with a class of 8,000. So over like the course of 12 years, it like quadrupled in size, which is really interesting to see and really kind of cool to be a part of. But at the
Yeah.
same time, it's pretty young in the sense that there's not a lot of alumni in like high finance, etc. Especially since we're not near like a financial hub or something like that. So
Gotcha.
less recruitment opportunities.
Gotcha. So, you say you had a few classmates that were trying to recruit as well. Like, have they gotten an offer as well, or are you kind of the first one?
Yeah, so some of them, I guess, were in different positions because a lot of them like knew about investment banking a lot later than I did, in that sense, and they kind of figured it out like after like their sophomore year and stuff like that. And they're like, yeah, maybe I'll transition to full time, but they got like offers from other places and stuff like that, in different fields. Like some got like Big Four offers and stuff like that, and they're like happy with those, and maybe I'll look for their banking. Others kind of like saw me going through the process of like recruiting and like, yeah, maybe I want to do this too. So they started to look into it and stuff like that. But obviously it was interesting to see. But a lot of people, I know there was like one person. It's just like some people are just don't know as much in that sense. So I don't know.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty common, like when we work with students from non-target schools, like one common theme is that there's just not a lot of people around you
Hmm.
who are going through the same process as you. And even if they were going through the same process as you, it's kind of like you said, like a lot of times they're kind of shooting in the dark. And so you end up just having to do a lot of trial and error, and you're not sure if like the way you're going about things is necessarily the best way or the most effective way,
Yeah.
which then puts you guys at like a pretty big disadvantage compared to, say, someone who goes to a Wharton or
Yeah.
like Columbia or NYU Stern or any of these, hardcore finance schools where everybody is doing this. All the
Yeah.
upperclassmen did this. All of your friends are doing this. You got a bunch of classes. You got a bunch of clubs, like a ton of alumni that you can reach out to, which makes networking way easier. And so it's just like
Hmm.
this is like totally not a level playing field, basically, right?
Hmm.
And so like you have to figure out a way. If you find yourself in that type of situation, then obviously like you have to work hard no matter what. But like
Yeah.
that's just like the bare minimum, right? And
Yeah.
it's not like the kids that get into the Whartons and Columbias and NYU students don't know how to work hard. Like they work hard. They also worked hard their entire lives, and they continue to do that, right? And so it's
Absolutely.
like you have to find a way to kind of like level the playing field or like even the odds a little bit so that you actually have like a fair shot at getting these jobs, right?
Hmm.
And so like if those resources aren't like available to you on campus, then you kind of have to go like outside of what's at school to figure it out on your own and basically get resourceful, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I guess let's talk a little bit about like kind of after you joined the program then. And I think you were kind of alluding to this a little bit earlier too, but
Hmm.
sounds like some of your approach changed after you joined, right? Like compared to what you were doing before. And so like what were the things in the program that you did that you felt like made the biggest difference for you? Like what were the biggest needle movers that like made the biggest impact in terms of helping you get to where you are today? Or
Yeah.
maybe like sometimes a lot of people ask us like a related question, which is, hey, like what's the difference, between doing this versus what I could have just done on my own, right? Like,
Hmm.
isn't it like, aren't you learning all the same stuff, right? Or like, isn't all the information out there already? Like, what do you feel like made the biggest difference for you? I guess.
Yeah, I think there are probably two. One specific to the recruiting process and one specific to the interview process. Um, I guess kind of two for the interview process. So I guess for the recruiting process itself, coming from non-target, I didn't really have too many people to talk to that knew about like networking for banking specifically and how to like kind of get like referrals proactively when you're reaching out to people and stuff like
Mm,
that. So in that sense, I think the program's networking module really kind of helped me structure my conversations well. And I was able to get some really good conversations out of my discussions with different bankers and really kind of analyze their group while at the same time really, I guess, having a great call and getting like a referral in that sense to like other
yeah.
people at the bank and that such. So that was a really big help in actually getting me interviews. I also think the resume, it really revamped my resume. I think my resume was in a decent format before, but I think the program really taught me how to write a really good resume that
Mm,
minimized white space, kind of maximize the impact of each bullet, like quantifying a lot. I think I edited like 10 different bullet points, just like adding different quantitative information. And I think it really revamped my resume and kind of gave me a big skill set and kind of revamping my resume in the future as well.
mm,
And I think, I guess for interviews itself, I think the behavioral module was the most helpful and kind of like the candidate questionnaire
yeah.
that we kind of fill out. I think I had the chance to work with one of the coaches. He really helped me kind of make my answers more concise and better written in that sense. And
Mm,
I think that's was a big reason why I actually got my offer, just because I came to the interview knowing this is how I'm going to structure it. It's not going to be verbatim, but I knew a good structure of it and how I
yeah.
can best communicate my points and stuff like that and kind of convey who I am as a person as well.
Mm.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Very cool. I guess to double click on that a little bit, because you're right. Like, the only two levers that control like how many interviews you get is pretty much how good is your resume, and then like how good are you at networking, right? And then like
Hmm.
the two things are also kind of dependent on each other, as in like obviously the stronger your resume, the higher your conversion rate is going to be for networking, right? Like for example, like nobody wants to talk to someone who has a really crappy resume, right? Because
Yeah.
people don't like to waste their time. Um, but I think also the other thing is like, to be honest, like part of your resume, or a part of like one of the most important things that people look at on your resume is also like what school do you go to, right? And
Hmm.
then like and then also like the reason they're looking at that is like, one, they want to know if it's target school, non-target school, but two, also like if you went to their school, usually they're more inclined to actually talk to you and help you and
Yeah,
whatnot, right?
absolutely.
Obviously, you didn't have that luxury, because I mean, I'm sure you reached out to like the two people from your school that were
Yeah.
working in banking, but like as
Hmm.
two people, right? And I don't know if they actually respond to you or not, but regardless, like, can you talk to us about um because obviously it sounds like you got multiple interviews. I don't know if you remember how many interviews you got, but like, can you talk to us about like what you feel like enabled you to overcome this almost like this handicap of like having no alumni that you can reach out to?
Hmm.
Because like how did you overcome that and still network successfully? Like a lot of students that also go to non-target schools, they're like, I can't get anyone to respond to me, right? Like no one will talk to me because I don't go to their school, or like they have these conversations and like people aren't willing to help them. How did you kind of navigate through that, I guess? Or like what do you feel like was like the one or two things that allowed you to actually, get those referrals and get those results despite not having this commonality with the people you were talking to, which commonality meaning like you didn't go to the same schools as them.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I think there were actually a few ways that I kind of went about this. One being from a non-target, although it can be seen as a weakness, you can actually make that kind of your strength, because a lot of the time coming from a non-target, there's going to be a lot of other non-target people that are in banking, and from that you can kind of connect with them because they've
Mm.
went through the similar process at a different non-target, right? So in that sense, you can kind of leverage that because you can kind of say like, "Hey, I'm in a similar position that you were. Can you kind of give me some advice?" So in that sense, you can kind of structure that way. Additionally, I think I'm from like this pretty small town and pretty small area. So in that sense, the few people that are in banking, they don't get many emails from that sense from people from the surrounding area. So I was actually able to leverage that a lot in my emails, just form like those genuine connections and kind of like
Mm.
point out like, hey, I'm really close to you. We actually grew up in like the same area. Could you get on a call? And that actually had great success. I had the chance to talk with like a few managing directors from that,
Mm.
and like some senior bankers, and that kind of helped me gauge a few different places. That was a great experience. I
Sorry,
think
just
as
to interrupt
well.
a little
Yeah,
bit. How
sure.
did you know? How did you know where they grew up?
Yeah, I just kind of went on LinkedIn, searched up like 10 to 15 different high schools in my area and went off that and
Mm,
just like searched up investment banking alongside it. So LinkedIn scouring and stuff like that.
smart.
Yeah. So just playing with LinkedIn search a few times and kind of going with that and developing those connections. I'd
Mm,
had some pretty good success with that. And also I had some good connections with other people from the similar state of where I go to school. Since it's like a pretty non heavy finance recruited area.
yeah,
It's like not close to any financial hubs, I'd say. So I was able to kind of leverage that, saying like I'm from a non-target in this state, because I'd say most of the schools are non-target. Maybe one is a semi-target.
yeah,
But in that sense, I was kind of leveraged that. I go to the same state, went to the same a college in the same state as you went to college in, also a non-target. So could you kind of
yeah.
get on a call with me? So just kind of leveraging any similarities.
So basically, you got creative, because I think like the example that you just gave, for example, like going on LinkedIn and looking up like the 10 to 15 high schools in your area, like
Yeah.
I don't think that's something that I've heard a lot of people do before. And so
Hmm.
basically, you have to like, because you don't have the luxury of just relying on the alumni from your college, you have to think outside the box a little bit and identify other commonalities that you might have with these bankers. And then by leveraging those commonalities, it actually makes you stand out more because no one
Yeah.
else is doing that.
Hmm.
That's very smart. Sorry, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to make sure that we double clicked on that for people because um that's probably something like just a piece of insight that they never thought of before.
Yeah.
But going back to what you were saying though, like what else were you what else were some of the other things?
Oh, I guess those are probably the main ones, and then I guess similar interests as well. I'd say I come from an interesting background. I'm involved with like video games in college, so I play like those competitively. So reaching out to
Mhm.
the one person, 1 to 3 people in banking that might have some sort of background in gaming was something. There's not many, but reaching out to them, I had some success with as well. And also I played basketball in high school, so kind of leveraging that interest as well to get some people on the phone. Just any interests that you see on like their LinkedIn, stuff like that. Maybe they played it in college or something. Using that in their email to structure, you say like, "We're similar in this way." It'll make them more likely to hop on a call.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that's really smart. Guys, like obviously this is just human psychology, but we like helping other people who are more similar to ourselves.
Hmm.
I don't know
Yeah,
why. Can't I'm not a scientist, can't explain it. It just is how it is. And so like the more you can identify these commonalities and use it to your advantage, the more success you're gonna have, right?
yeah,
Um, and then like on the interview side of things, obviously, you talked about kind of like the behavioral interview. Um, I think a lot of people when they think about the behavioral interview, and I don't know if this was how you thought about it too coming in, or if you already knew that the behavioral interview was something that you need help with. But I feel like a lot of students, they're really worried about the technical interview because, that's something that's more of a foreign concept to them. And it's kind of like very obvious if you know the answer versus if you don't,
hmm,
right? And so people are worried about walking into that interview and then literally not being able to answer the question that's asked versus for the behavioral interview, I feel like the more common attitude or mentality around it is like, yeah, like behavioral interviews are fine or they're easy or like, yeah, it's just talking about yourself, right? Like I can do that all day. Like I know what I want to say about myself. And so like I don't really need to change much, if anything. Like I was just like, do whatever I'm already doing.
yeah.
And so like my question to you would be like, you said the behavioral coaching made a big difference. Like, is it that like did your answers actually change that much? Or like what was it about that was so helpful? Like how much better can your behaviorals actually get? Can we kind of like help people visualize that a little bit?
Yeah, I think behaviorals at their core is actually like a big way you can differentiate yourself. I think you kind of hone on this in like different modules and stuff like that. But I think obviously that's a big way you can differentiate yourself. And I don't think my behaviorals are necessarily bad. Because a lot of the time it's just talking about your different experiences and drawing upon those and kind of forming like an articulate answer to show like your skills.
Yeah.
And a lot of times. So in that sense, I think I could have done it, but I think the behavioral module really helped me structure my answers in a way that's concise and help the interviewer kind of follow them and really get to know me without trying to be all over the place from like a scattered answer. So in that sense, it really helped me structure my answers, and I think it helped me convey my points a lot better. And I think it was a big reason just because I was able to confidently communicate. I did this task, and this is what it kind of shows, and this is why I think I'd be a great fit for this role.
Yeah.
So it just kind of made sense of kind of structuring that answer, and I think it was a big separator from like other people that might not have like as organized responses.
Yeah. And I would say like to be honest, when you get to like the super day, usually it's a mix of behavioral and technical questions, but in our
Mhm.
experience, like most of not all, but most of the students, if they're able to get that far in the process, usually they're gonna know their technicals anyway, right?
Yeah.
Like, so meaning, like you were probably I don't know if you got to meet the other students at your super day or if you were doing them remotely, but
Mhm.
like they were probably mostly kids from like much more well-known schools,
Yeah, I'm
uh,
sure.
like Ivy League schools, top public schools with business programs and things like that. And like
Mhm.
those students are just they're gonna be well prepped. Like they're not gonna like the way you're gonna differentiate yourself from them is not gonna come down to like, oh, because you know more about the DCF than they do, or
Yeah.
you know more about the LBL than they do. Like it's almost just like a check the box type of thing. Is like you have to know enough and you can't like not know it when they know it, then obviously like then you get eliminated. But it's like if you know it and they also know it, okay, you guys are about the same there.
Hmm.
And then it comes down to like the behavioral part of the interview is where you can, like you said, really differentiate yourself, because that's where not everyone's going to have the same answers, right?
Hmm.
Like when I say, tell me about yourself, you're going to have a totally different story than the Wharton kid or the Columbia kid or the NYU Stern kid. And just because they go to a target school and you don't, it doesn't mean that their answer is necessarily going to be better than yours, right?
Yep.
And so that's where you can actually like find a lot more variance from one candidate to another. And to be honest, like as a non-target school student, like you need to find a way to, you need to, it's almost like you need to give the interviewer a reason to hire you, right?
Hmm.
Like nobody's ever been fired for hiring the Wharton kid. Nobody's ever been fired for hiring like the Harvard kid,
Yep.
right? And so like if you're like not differentiated and you are coming from non-target school and you're about the same as like the Ivy League kid, like it's just safer. The safer thing to do for the interviewer is to just hire the kid that went to the Ivy League school. Like that.
Hmm.
That's why like it's not really fair, but like interviewers use these shortcuts like school and GPA and things like that, which is like really a lazy way to like try to discern like who's a better candidate and who's not. But it's just
Hmm.
because like you have a limited amount of information.
Yep.
And so if you don't give them enough of a reason to take that chance on you, then they're just gonna go with the safer option.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
Um, so I think like, that's like cannot overstate the importance of really like, making sure that your answers are not just cookie cutter and they actually make you stand out, right? That's why I was like, well, with something like behaviorals, like if you're just, I don't know, regurgitating the exact same answers that you read from some guy that everyone else is also reading, like chances are you're probably gonna just sound like everybody else.
Yeah.
So that's like definitely something that you don't want to do. I guess the last thing that I'll ask you about kind of the program too, like because you talked about like one of the reasons why you joined was also like the community aspect of it,
Sure.
right? Um, so probably coming in, like even though that was one of the reasons you decided to join, like in terms of your expectations coming in versus like what actually happened from a community standpoint after you came in, like can you talk about that? Like, did it meet your expectations? Was it below your expectations or did it exceed? Like, what were the like? How did it play out in reality versus like
Hmm.
what you thought it was going to be coming in?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this was it actually exceeded my expectations because I kind of expected the chats, right? Technical, behavioral, networking too. If you have any questions, people can answer those. The coaches can also answer you. They can start a good dialogue. But also, I think the mock interview chat was really helpful for me. I had a chance to talk with like another student. We did like a mock with each other before some of our interviews.
Hmm.
So that was kind of helpful. I think in my interview, I did like a paper LBO just to prepare if that kind of came up in an interview, which it did. So that was really helpful for me.
Hmm.
And I think obviously having other people in the group going through the same recruiting process that you are, you're able to kind of talk with different people about like your interview experiences and like what to expect coming out. It just makes you more prepared in that sense. So that kind of exceeded my expectations too, because I think someone asked for like if someone interviewed here and I answered because I did first round and they were doing first round too. So I just was able to chime in. So that the community is pretty open to kind of sharing some feedback and helping others get offers too.
Hmm. Got it. So you're talking about just like kind of how collaborative everyone
Yeah,
is. Like even though investment banking recruiting is like this very competitive process, I guess inside of this community at least, people are constantly sharing information with each other, sharing information about like how their experience was interviewing with a certain firm. If you also have the same interview coming up, maybe it'll help you, and just doing that kind of stuff where uh there's like there's no like scarcity mindset, I guess. It's like
yeah.
everybody's trying to win together,
Hmm.
which actually is a beautiful thing because like they say, like a rising tide lifts all boats, and I think like we really see that play out in this community. Whereas like you probably don't get the experiences at school just because there's not a lot of people at your school that are actually trying to get into banking. But like
Yeah.
ironically, like all of our students that we work with from the schools like Wharton's and Columbia's and those types of schools, they're like, yeah, like a lot of people at my school doing banking, but like everyone kind of just like tries to keep all the information they have to themselves because they view
Yeah.
each other as a competition, and like if you get a job, that's one less job for me, right?
Hmm.
And so like recruiting, honestly, like you got to find your tribe, right? Like if you don't have people that are there to kind of like help you and support you along the way, like it could be a very lonely process, and it's a grind, right? Like I
Yeah,
mean, I'm
absolutely.
sure, especially for like I don't know, like how many networking conversations you had to have along the way, and like how many late nights you had to spend studying for interviews, and this is all on top of everything else you already have to do as a full-time college student. Like
Hmm.
a lot of people just get burnt out,
Yeah,
or they don't have that support system that keeps them going, versus like if you know that, hey, yeah, this is hard right now, but I see all these other people that are going through the exact same things that I'm going through, and we're all going through it together. um that makes a big difference, like psychologically, to like just keep you going. Or it was like when you pledge a fraternity, like pledging's tough, but like you have a
yeah,
class of pledge brothers that go through it with you, and then like you guys go through it together, and that's actually like makes it a lot more bearable, and it's a bonding experience too, right? It's kind
absolutely.
of similar, right? um so that's awesome. I guess my last question for you is, now that you're on the other side of this process, like you got in this offer, great offer. I would say, probably like, I mean, yeah, it's a very reputable, like one of the best middle
Yeah.
market banks, I would say. Um, like, what's the best piece of advice that you have, that you can share with our audience? Like, whether it's maybe a piece of advice that someone else gave you that really made a big difference for you, or maybe it's just something that you figured out on your own along the way, that you felt like was a game changer. Like, was there anything like that that you want to kind of pass down to other people?
Yeah, sure. I think the biggest thing is mindset in this case when it comes down to recruiting. I think you
Mm,
kind of touched on the grind aspect. A lot of times when you're going to be recruiting, you're going to be working, might be working an in-semester internship. You're going to be doing classes full time. You might have your extracurriculars that you still have to do. Got to prep for technicals. Got to talk with people as well. And you obviously got to send out cold emails. So it's a lot of it's just like mentality, keeping strong, kind of like being willing to just hit the pavement continuously. It's a numbers game at the end of the day a lot of times, and as much as you can maximize it by reaching out to people with commonalities, you're still going to have to email thousands, hundreds of people just to get
mm,
that one interview. So in that sense, it's a lot of times it's a numbers game. You just got to keep your head up, even though it might be tough at some points and you'll feel unmotivated for sure. I know I felt unmotivated plenty of times, but obviously it's just about keeping your head down, keep hitting the pavement, and kind of that stuff. So
yeah. I think like this is one thing that I'm realizing as I work with more and more students, is that one of the biggest differences between those who are successful versus those who are not is kind of exactly what you said, which is they just have a different mentality in
mhm,
terms of like being willing to hit the pavement, so to speak. Like there are some students that I can tell, during recruiting, it's like their number one priority. And obviously you still got to like maintain your grades in school and whatnot. But like outside of that, it's like everything they do, everything else that they're doing with their time is like something that's related to recruiting, or like directly contributing to improving their chances at getting a job, right? Like, well,
yeah,
like you said, like whether it's like doing internships on the side, or like extracurriculars, like all these things are to like to build up their resume, or they're doing interview prep, or they're networking. It's like recruiting almost becomes like all consuming, and it's like to a degree where it's like I would say almost like maybe in a slightly unhealthy way. But like the good news is
absolutely.
like it's a temporary thing,
Hmm.
right? Like it's a short-term thing where like for a period of weeks or months, depending on where you're on the timeline, you almost have to enter into like this, I call it like a season of no, where you have to say no to a lot of the other things that you normally wouldn't say no to,
Hmm.
right? You might have to say no to like hanging out with your friends as much. You might have to like, say no to like social events that you would have gone to. You might say no, you might, like there's all these sacrifices that you have to make and you have to cut out in order to like reach your goals.
Yep.
Versus like, I think a lot of students, they aren't able to do that, right? And then so they continue to do all these other things like, oh, I gotta run a marathon this weekend. Oh, next weekend I gotta take like a 3 day road trip with my girlfriend, and like,
Yeah.
and then every week I play 5 hours of intramural soccer. And it's like I'm not saying don't do any of these things, but I'm saying like for a short period of time, because like the recruiting timeline doesn't wait for anyone, right? Like if you don't get the offer, during like that very specific window, like it's pretty much done.
Yeah.
Right. And so sometimes you just have to like pause on those other things that are not as urgent and like not as important in terms of like being a priority, at least in the grand scheme of things,
Hmm.
and then achieve your goals. And then you can go back to doing those things.
Yep.
Right. And so like bottom line is success requires sacrifice, but honestly, like not everyone's able to make those sacrifices, is what I'm learning. And so like ultimately, like that's what separates the winners from the losers, to be honest. Right. So I think that's really, really good advice. Um, the mentality, the mindset piece, which like I find no one really ever talks about it, but like that's the mental game is like half the battle, to be honest.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like without that mental toughness, like you're just not gonna make it through recruiting.
Yeah.
So guys, I think this has been, I think, a very insightful interview. Hopefully, you guys, took away a lot of useful tidbits that you can use and incorporate into your own recruiting process as well. But if you're, in a similar position as Michael, if you're, also coming from a non-target school, you don't have a lot of alumni, you don't have a lot of even peers or upperclassmen around you who have gone through this process before, and you feel like you're kind of shooting in the dark, and having to do a lot of trial and error and having to figure things out on the fly, and you're not on like this level playing field against like these students from other schools that you're competing with. Then I want to encourage you to reach out, speak to our team. Um, just like tell us more about what your current situation is and what it is that you actually feel like you need help with, and also what your goals are. And then like based on what you tell us and based on how much time you have left and based on what your current profile is, like there's a lot of different variables, but we'll do our best to come up with a customized game plan for you in terms of what we think it's going to take for you to get to your goals, right? And if we feel very confident about our ability to help you get there, then obviously we can talk about how we could work together and how we can help you implement that. But sometimes, even if we don't feel confident that we might be able to get you to where you need to go, at a minimum, we'll give you some advice on what we think you should do instead, as opposed to working with us. And either way, like our goal is to just provide some value and help you make forward progress, whether that's with us or without us, and just get you one step closer to your goal. So if that's something that you would like to do, you can reach out to us and schedule this call at www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street is abbreviated to ST, so it's wall stmastermind.com/apply. And we look forward to talking to you. All right. With that said, Michael, I want to thank you again for taking the time to come on here and just talk about your journey with everyone and share all the insights that you did along the way, and then also obviously congratulate you again for really overcoming the odds. I'm sure like a lot of people would have said like, oh, there's no way like someone's going to get into banking from the school
Hmm.
that you go to, but obviously you made it happen, and wasn't also just like some random bank that no one's ever heard of, but like one of the best middle market banks out there,
Yep.
truly. And so I think it's a great accomplishment, and you should be super proud of yourself. We're super proud of you, and just really looking forward to seeing like continue to follow your career and see all the success that you have ahead of you. So yeah, like definitely going forward, if you have other things that you need help with, how to find us. Don't be a
Yep.
stranger.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's great
Yeah,
talking about it.
absolutely. Guys, so we're gonna wrap it up here. Hopefully that was helpful for you guys, and we're gonna be back with more of these for you guys in the near future. And until next time, all right.